Yeah, here it is. So this is something I came across randomly. It was shared by a friend. It's called the Shirky principle, and it's a psychological concept. It's quite logical and interesting from understanding how easy or complicated it can be to solve certain problems. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
check. Okay, I'll go to that. Oh, lots of little boxes popping up on my screen wanting to sell me things that I don't want to buy. Okay. Well, I keep getting ads for dog food. I don't have a dog. I'm allergic to dogs. I keep getting ads for dog food.
Mm-hmm.
What is that about? Okay. Um, Here's the chat. Okay. I'm going to put in, okay, we can have a little look at this this idea. And it's related to problem solving, and sometimes this is not always the case. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
there are different mindsets that exist. Let's just automatically assume when there's a problem, there are some people who want to solve the problem, and there are some people who don't want to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
A question, why, right? Well, there are some people who make profit from the problem. There are some people who make profit from the problem. Now, some problems in life are natural, right? I'm very happy that somebody makes toilet paper, okay? Right? Because I don't want to have to solve that world problem without toilet paper. I'm very happy that farmers plant seeds and have seeds to plant and can grow crops because that means there's food for everybody. No farmers, no food, as they say. Anyway, the Shirky principle. This is just to keep this in mind. Think about it. It's just to keep
Mm-hmm.
this in mind. Think about it. The Shirky principle is the adage or the saying or the idea or the concept that institutions will try to preserve the problem to which they are the solution. More broadly, it can also be characterized as the saying or the idea that every entity tends to prolong the problem that it is solving. For the simple reason, as I explained, that problems can be profitable for certain people. Certain problems can be profitable for certain people. If we look at it from a political, military, industrial concept, which is a strange way of looking at it, but
Mm-hmm.
there are companies that sell guns and tanks and airplanes and bombs, and these companies need there to be conflicts. Because if there's no conflict in the world, they can't sell their
Mm-hmm.
airplanes and their bombs and their weapons and their guns and their tanks, and they benefit greatly from this. Not only do they benefit from doing that, also they have companies that are involved in restructuralization and rebuilding. And once you've destroyed a country completely, you have to rebuild it. And there's a lot of money in rebuilding things. So, um, of course, there's a horrible negative side to all of those things that we won't go into. But there is also there's an understanding that for as long as the problem exists, somebody will have to supply the solution. And maybe in some situations, look, if your company is able to work without you, if your company is able to solve the problem of you, because to be honest, you are both an asset and a problem to your company. You're an
Mm-hmm.
asset to your company because you have knowledge and skills and experience and can solve problems. But you're a problem to your company because your company has to pay you. And your
Mm-hmm.
company has to pay insurance, and that's expensive. And if your company had a choice, if the company could work without you, It would, right? Right? The people at the top, if they could work, if they looked at the numbers and they said, we can work without Peter and John and Mary
Mm.
and Patrick, whoever, if it's like, oh, we can work. Sorry, it's just business, right? It's nothing personal. It's just business, right? And at the top, these are the kinds of decisions that they make. And the people at the bottom really don't have much say or much choice in the 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 big overarching decisions that people make at the top. But anyway, this is interesting. The Shirky principle, because it's the principle of problems, and all business is problem solving, and so it's an interesting idea. Now we have to remember it's a theory. Okay, so if you believe the world is a good place full of good people, then you got to trust that everybody's intentions and everybody's plans are good. Now, if you are more conspiratorial in your mindset, you're going to be more questioning about, is this really a good thing? I'm not sure. So we different people look at the same thing in different ways. So back to the text. For example, the Shirky principle means that a government agency, this is specifically related to government organizations because government always grows. You ever notice that? Government always gets bigger, never gets small, always gets bigger until the country goes. For example, the Shirky principle means that a government agency that's meant to address a certain societal issue may stop attempts by others to address the issue or solve the issue in order to ensure that the agency remains relevant. For as long as there's a problem, you will need to supply the solution. There was a classic example years ago of the story that I heard was that there was a garage in one area that supplied glass to cars, and in that part of the city, there was a large amount of crime where at night people would take baseball bats to cars. Now you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that the people who owned the garage, yep, they put some money to the side there to pay some low-life criminal type people with no brains to you can always find them. They're everywhere. People who only think about today and don't think about tomorrow, to go out and to destroy the cars. Now, over a period of time, people worked out, okay, eventually some of the criminals were caught. I sort of don't think that the people at the very top were caught, but eventually the activity stopped because too many people realized what was happening. But it's just an example of the fact that problems exist, and sometimes problems are real problems, and sometimes problems are artificial problems. They're artificially created or accidentally created as well by people. In trying to do the right thing, we sometimes do the wrong thing, right? What would be an example? The creation of golf courses. I choose golf courses because I'm in Scotland and there's a golf course. Now, there's a strong argument for having a golf course is very good for the community. It's a resource. It's a leisure activity. It provides jobs. It somehow supports the economy. Even though if you look at the economics of golf courses, there's a big question mark as to do they really support the economy or not. But that's a different debate. Anyway, the point I want to make is there's a strong argument for having a golf course is really positive. However, secrets that people don't know, golf courses use a lot of chemicals. That's how they keep the grass so green and the golf course so flat and fresh. And that's why they only have plants and flowers specifically in certain areas. And they don't have little animals destroying parts of the golf course. these chemicals go into the ground, and then they go into the water supply, and then they poison everything that is connected to the water supply. Fish would be a good example of that in the local rivers. And so in trying to support the local economy, you perhaps accidentally poison the fish. Um, and that's a consequence of things. So sometimes these are accidentally negative consequences. Anyway, back to the text. Alternatively, the agency may become so focused on the current way in which it addresses the issue that it will fail to adopt better new solutions. There's a great phrase. We need to adopt better new solutions as they become. That's really good for marketing. We all need to adopt better new solutions as they become available. Because if we don't, we get left behind. And so if we don't adopt better new solutions, we make longer the issue or longer the problem. So the Shirky principle has important implications in various domains. So it's important to understand it from the perspective that certain problems will be of benefit to certain people. I'll give you another example. Here's another example. It was discovered in studies between the 1970s and the 1980s. And this is from a lecture that I listened to by a man called John Taylor Gatto, who's a historical researcher, and he studies statistics, and it's very interesting statistics. So it was discovered that, strangely enough, the amount of crime that exists in an area is directly proportional to the number of lawyers that exist in an area. There's a direct correlation. Now, when there's a direct correlation, sometimes the correlation means that things don't grow at exactly the same rate, but some things grow and other things follow the growth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it would be logical to think that wherever there is more crime, that is where the lawyers will gravitate to. They will move to that area to support the needs of people who need to go to court to resolve their issue or to resolve the crime that they believe has happened. Well, guess what he discovered? He discovered that the rising amount of lawyers in any particular area is followed by the amount of crime. It's not that the lawyers follow the crimes, it's that the crimes follow the lawyers, and that there's always a rise in crime in an area where there are a higher amount of lawyers. Now, you can argue that this is because there's more reporting, right? You can argue that because there's no lawyers, the crime is not reported and nobody knows about it. You can argue that to a certain extent, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting because, understandably, lawyers, the basis of lawyers' work is that they want to help their clients. But in order to help their clients, there is the requirement of a problem. There is a requirement of a problem. If you don't have a problem, then you can't make money. If you don't have a conflict, then you can't make money. And so for as long as there is conflict between people, lawyers will always have a job, which is why it's a great industry to be in, because there's an endless amount of work for them to do. I remember years ago when I was in Slovakia that if you wanted to open a certain court case, because I had lawyers as clients, they were telling me it could take 2 to 3 years for your case to get to court because there's so many steps and so many processes, and there's so many cases. I don't want to say crime, not crimes, because we don't know if they're crimes, But there's so many cases that it can take years and years to actually get to court. And it's a horribly complicated process. And to be honest, who wants to be a lawyer, right? Every day dealing with people's problems. Who wants to be that? It's very stressful job. Yeah. And on the other side, who wants to be a judge, right? Sitting all day listening to people's problems and trying to decide or define what the truth of matters really is. Very, very complicated. So anyway, unfortunately, some people do feed off of problems. But problems are a natural part of life. Anyway, every person is employed to solve a problem. We'll read a little bit more examples of the Shirky principle. Now, I'm trying to find out the origin of the Shirky. It's okay. I think it's clay Shirky. I think if we read a little bit more, an example of the Shirky principle are in tax filing companies who lobby the government to prevent it from offering a free and easy way to file taxes. There we go. To ensure that the companies can continue to make a profit. As long as taxes are complicated and people want to make money and businesses need to survive, then, there's a business. A similar example of this are private prison companies. These exist. Do you know who owns the prisons in Great Britain? Do you know who owns the prisons? They're private. Yeah, they're owned by Bill Gates, right? Seriously. It's crazy. It's crazy. A similar example of the look, if you own the prisons, you can't go to prison because you own them, right? Smart dude. A similar example of this are private prison companies who lobby the government to support policies that increase the number of incarcerated people and the duration of their incarceration. Yep. No victim crime, for example, was a great example of this. No victim crime. If a crime has no victim, is it a crime? Well, no. But no victim crimes exist. And this was the Western governments were lobbied by certain companies to include this in the bills or the rosters of crimes that exist. An example of a no victim crime would be smoking marijuana, right? Smoking. Now, personally, I don't think that people should smoke marijuana. I don't think it's really very positive. That's my own personal opinion, but I'm all for individual choice. But in most countries, it's not legal to smoke marijuana. Okay, well, who's for there to be a crime, there must be a victim. Who's the victim? There's no victim. You're yourself.
Yep.
Yourself, right? So I'm the victim of my own crime, right? That's a crime, and that's crazy. But the world is crazy. So there we go. Another well-known example of the Shirky principle is described in Cognitive Surplus, a book by Clay Shirky. I assume that he's the origin of the idea, that contained one of the first discussions of the principle. PickupPal.com is a carpooling site designed to coordinate drivers and riders planning to travel along the same route. How long is this? Oh, this is quite long. I'm not gonna read the whole example, but you can imagine that there is some kind of positive and negative there. It's all about governments making things legal and illegal to benefit certain groups. Underneath that is, in addition, the Shirky principle can also apply to entities other than institutions. I'm sure it can apply to individuals as well. I mean, individual people need certain problems to exist. Everybody needs a problem to exist for there to be jobs. If there's no problems, we'd all be lying on the beach somewhere. Right? Or just taking cruises around the world. For example, an individual employee who's in charge of a certain process, in their workplace, might resist attempts to automate that process in order to ensure that the employee remains necessary to their employer. I am a necessity. we're It's good to feel needed. It's good to feel like a necessity. Okay. Just scrolling down the text, one more little example that's in relation to that is the paragraph that starts one real world. If I read that paragraph, one real world example of the Shirky effect is the cobra effect in relation to the snake. It describes a case where British colonial officials, when Britain was an empire, colonial officials in Delhi, India, set a bounty on dead cobras. They paid people for the number of cobras that they killed. They set a bounty in order to reduce the cobra population. However, this led citizens to breed the cobras for profit and eventually to release them when the bounty was cancelled, causing a rise in the number of cobras. So yeah, when there's a bounty on something, it might increase the number of people who are interested in that thing. It's the pot of gold principle, where you put the pot of gold over here and everybody goes over here.
Mm-hmm.
You put the pot of gold over here and everybody goes over here. And everybody follows the pot of gold wherever you put the pot of gold. And we see that in a lot of government contracts and tenders, where the pot of gold, the money is put in a certain place, and everybody tries to win the contract. 1 second. Windows would like to restart your computer right now. No. No, I don't want that. Thank you, but no thank you. There we go. The article then describes another incident from Hanoi in Vietnam in 1902, when they tried to reduce the rat population in the city, but all that happened was the rat population increased. The Shirky principle, a bit of history. The Shirky principle was proposed in a 2010 blog post by Kevin Kelly, editor of Wired magazine, who based it on the speaking and writing of a scholar, Clay Shirky. That is the origin. In addition to mentioning quotes, Kelly also says the following in his blog post: the Shirky principle declares that complex solutions, like a company or an industry, can become so dedicated to the problem, can become so dedicated to the problem that they are the solution to, that they often inadvertently, by accident, perpetuate the problem. Yeah. And if I was conspiratorial, I would say that governments are a classic example of that, with their conflicts and their insistence on injecting themselves into every aspect of social life. Here's a question. If governments are a problem, it's theoretically, if governments are a problem, then how can a government school educate children to solve the problem when schools are themselves a government institution, run, organized, managed, planned, and institutionalized by the government itself? I would suggest that there's a conflict of interest there. In the article, continuing, there's another important point, I think. In a strong sense, we are defined by the problems we are solving. I'm going to read that again because that's important. In a strong sense, we are defined by the problems we are solving. I think it's very true. The problems that we choose to solve are the problems that define us. They are how people see us, either in a positive or negative light. Yin and yang, problem and solution, are both two sides of one unit, which is the example I've very often used for love and hate. I believe that love and hate are two sides of the same coin. I do not think we can have love without hate, and I do not think we can have hate without love. Therefore, if we punish people for hate, or we ban hate, we also at the same time punish people for love and ban love. That is why we must allow so-called hate speech. We must let everybody say exactly what they want to say, because that is the only way to know the truth. Because of the Shirky principle, which says that every entity tends to prolong the problem it is solving, progress sometimes demands that we let go of problems. Ooh, that's quite profound. How many times are we connected to problems that we can't let go of, and it makes the problem bigger? That's something that is very true psychologically for people all across society. Okay, 2 more points. Can I read 2 more bits? Okay, so essentially in his writing on the topic, Kelly offers 3 formulas. I like numbers. 3 formulas of the Shirky principle, which differ in subtle but important ways. So 3 ways to look at this. Way number 1, the first formulation: institutions will try to preserve the problem to which they are the solution. We've all seen that happen. Second formulation: complex solutions like a company or an industry can be dedicated to the problem they are the solution to, and so they often inadvertently perpetuate the problem. This refers to the fact that complex solutions are often too complex to solve. And the third formulation: every entity tends to prolong the problem it is solving. This also relates to the fact that certain universities did studies on whether students produced better work if they were given a longer time. And the result was that very often when you give students a longer time to produce work, the result is not better. Very often better results are produced when shorter time periods are set than longer time periods are set, which is counterintuitive. We would think that in every case, given a longer time, the problem, that the solution would be greater or better, but very often it's not. Take the example of solving the problem as an individual or solving the problem as a group. If solving the problem as an individual, you have an idea, you go to the task, you do it, boom. Whereas if you have a group, you sit down and you have a meeting and you all discuss the different ways and everybody has their input and the meeting finishes and nothing happens for a while, unless there's a specific action plan at the end of the meeting, which then has to be covered at the beginning of the next meeting, and things roll on and roll on. Certain advantages are in both scenarios, and so on. So I won't continue, but it's very interesting to understand that element of problems that exists everywhere. One other point that I think is important, I'm going to give you the Wikipedia link to, but now I don't know where it is. I lost it. Too much text everywhere. I should have done something about it. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Here's the text from the Wikipedia. In his book, in Clay Shirky's book, Here Comes Everybody, Shirky explains how he has long spoken in favor of crowdsourcing, getting ideas or finance from groups of people, and collaborative efforts online. He uses the phrase, the internet runs on love, to describe the, I would say, positive nature of such collaborations. In the book, he discusses the way in which the action of a group adds up to something more than just aggregated individual action. Interesting. Borrowing the phrase, more is different, from physicist Philip Warren Anderson. Now, the key point being more is different. When you have more of something, or say more people involved in a project, the result is not just collaborative effort, but the result is different. The product is different because different minds are coming together with different ideas about how perhaps something should be marketed or how the product should be. And when you have more of a product, the situation is different. When you have bigger groups, when you have bigger sales, not everything is equal. Not everything is equal, I think, is what he's saying there.